And Labour's deputy leader is now formally being investigated by police over whether or not she broke the law when she sold her house in 2015. Well, Greater Manchester Police had previously said it would not be investigating the allegations against Ms Rayner, but they have today acted following a complaint from Tory Deputy Chairman James Daly. Well, I'm joined in our studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, let's have another chat about this. The situation could have been nipped in the bud a long time ago. I was astonished last week when Sir Keir Starmer said to you, I don't need to see the evidence. And then we heard from David Lammy, she had a blended family. She's a northern woman. And what's happened is it's rumbled on so long. Now James Daly has steamed in, and now the old bill are involved, and that's when things change.
Yes, it means they've lost control of it, Martin, because originally, when Angela Rayner has always maintained nothing wrong here, it was my main residence, I was registered to vote there. When I sold the property, there was no capital gains tax because it's my main residence. She says she has proof of that. She's had some tax advice and had other advice. Hasn't published it. Keir Starmer has said, I don't want to see it. I believe Angela, which is interesting because he's a top lawyer. Why wouldn't you want to see legal advice if that's what it is, or tax advice? She maintains there's nothing wrong here. That she says that, and the Labour Party says that they welcome the chance for Angela to be able to clear her name, set out the facts with the police. They're confident Angela has complied with the rules at all times and it's appropriate to let the police do its work. Keir Starmer says we'll allow us to let a line be drawn under it. Number 10 say there's questions to answer. Interestingly, though, Keir Starmer in Barrow-in-Furness today, emphasising the Labour backing for the nuclear deterrent, wouldn't say 3 times whether Ms Rayner should resign if she gets some kind of police fine or some kind of punishment after this investigation. So it's now going to play out over the next few months. I do expect it to come back. It can be maybe October, November on the eve of the general election if it happens in November. So whereas there was a point at which they could have disclosed everything, get it all out there, full transparency, that hasn't happened. It's meant there's a head of steam behind it that pressure appears to have led to the police looking at it again and now investigating.
Isn't this an issue of double standards? In fact, Grant Shapps today said precisely that, because Angela Rayner has spent her political career, according to him, calling people out and demanding transparency, more calling for heads to roll if the Conservatives put a foot wrong, particularly Boris Johnson, Partygate and all of that. And yet there's been this kind of denial about this to the point now where it's simply become too big to ignore. My question is this. Angela Rayner was meant to be one of Sir Keir Starmer's best assets. She's got the common touch. She can touch the electorate in a way that he can't. Is she now becoming one of the party's biggest liabilities?
Well, she's not yet. She's well liked. She polls very well. People like her. People in the Red Wall, crucially, think she's authentic. There was a chance when she could have said, well, here's what happened, rightly or wrongly, and she hasn't done anything. She's merely said she's gone after the messenger, not the fact. After Lord Ashcroft, his book, former Tory donor, he had the original allegations. The Daily Mail went after it. The Tories have been talking about it. She's gone after the messenger, not the facts, and now it's up to the police. OK, well, that news about Angela Rayner has certainly overshadowed a big announcement from Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer today, who's promised that the UK's nuclear deterrent is safe in his hands. And Sir Keir has spent today in Barrow-in-Furness, where his party has said all 4 new Dreadnought nuclear submarines would be built under a Labour government. Now, of course, this is a huge shift in policy from the Jeremy Corbyn years, because Corbyn was famously opposed to the use of any nuclear weapons. But Sir Keir says the Labour Party has changed.
The commitment I made here today is really important. I think I'm the first Labour leader to come here to the shipyard here to see the building of the submarines for 30 years and to make a very important generational commitment, which is to the Dreadnought submarines, to the continuous at-sea deterrent and to the upgrades that are needed over time. And of course there's AUKUS in there as well. So this is a generational commitment.
So there we go. And the big question I'm asking today is this. Are Labour really ready for government? Well, Christopher Hope is still with me. I'm also joined by the former Labour Party advisor, Matthew Larser, and political commentator, Chloe Dobbs. Why don't we start with you, Matthew? This, to me, feels very, very Blairite. It feels almost like things can only get better. It feels like Union Jacks being flown, just waiting for D-Ream to steam in. Getting big on nuclear, getting big on defence, getting big on partial privatisation of the NHS. And the big question is the party ready for government, or there's still time for mishaps, as we've seen with Angela Rayner?
Well, I mean, look, there were, a week is a long time in politics. Well, 6 months before an election is a very long time in politics, so there can be, wheels can yet fall off the bus. But in terms of the defence issue, I mean, what's quite interesting is Jeremy Corbyn never managed to change the defence policy. The Labour committed to the Trident submarine all the way through, not least because there are tens of thousands of unionised workers there, and it's also important. It's the only Labour MSP in Scotland. It's where they end up. Labour directly elected MSP, constituency MSP, is where they end up. Jackie Bailey, who's the deputy leader. So he didn't manage to change the policy, but Keir's been re-emphasising it with his visit to Barrow today, because he literally is putting his tanks on the Tories' lawn. He is now confident about defence in a way, frankly, even Tony Blair wasn't. This is even in the days of Tony Blair, Labour polled, it often would get there or thereabouts for the Tories, but now for the first time it's polling as more trusted by the public on defence than the Tories.
Do you think Blair's involved in advising Sir Keir Starmer? This, to me, feels like Blair's fingerprints are all over it.
I mean, I think that, I think he talks to Tony, but I think he talks to lots of people as well. I mean, Lord Mandelson is always somewhere in the background offering his advice, sometimes inappropriately, is about his weight loss, but when he said Keir should lose a few pounds, which probably didn't endear him. Maybe his calls won't return for a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think Labour has to be careful that it doesn't entirely use the Blair 1997 playbook. I know it's hard to believe, but I was around then. I had hair and hope. The hope's come back. The hair, I don't think, is going to be with us anytime soon. And, we are in a very changed world from 1997. I get a little bit worried. They haven't done it in the last 48 hours. When they sort of say, oh, well, there's a lot to learn from Thatcher and things, you've got to be a voter over 50 to ever voted for Thatcher. So they need to just be a little bit careful. But this isn't 1997. But yes, there are lots of good things to take from the Blairite years. And one of those is reiterating Labour's commitment to defence. And it's interesting that in his article today for the Mail, Keir's done it in terms of Labour's historic support for NATO and the post-war Labour government, which is quite a clever line for the party.
Well, Matthew, it's starting to feel like there's more chance of your hair growing back than Rishi Sunak winning the next general election. Let's move on now to political commentator Chloe Dobbs. Chloe, welcome to the show. One of the words that keeps coming up in the Your Say inbox at GB News here is trust. People keep saying that Sir Keir Starmer, don't forget, he backed Jeremy Corbyn on nuclear when he was leader. He wanted a second referendum. Do you think that this is a government in waiting, Sir Keir Starmer a Prime Minister in waiting, or is he a shapeshifter? He simply says whatever it takes to get elected.
Oh, he absolutely is a shapeshifter. I don't think he really has that much of a moral compass. I think he's a fairly dry lawyer. He'll just say whatever needs to be said to win the election. And he gets that nickname Keir Flip-Flop Starmer for a reason. As you just said, he previously supported Corbyn and then realised that that wasn't going to be good in terms of election prospects. So now he's trying to pretend that he never even said that. He's doing various things to try and separate himself from the Corbyn years, like he is doing with the nuclear deterrent here, like he is trying to do with the anti-Semitism issue. But I think that we are seeing more and more often now that we're seeing the cracks, and we are seeing that maybe the party is not going to be completely united behind him. You saw that with the saga with the Rochdale election, where he tried to separate himself from Azhar Ali. I know it's a completely different topic to the nuclear deterrent, but it's just one example that shows that maybe it's not a changed Labour Party and it's just a changed Keir Starmer. You then had Labour Party members still going out and campaigning for Azhar Ali because clearly the problems had not been solved in the party. So, and with all these things, he just says, I'll give more money to this, I'll give more money to this, I'll give more money to this. But, there's no magic money tree. And as we saw with that 28 billion pledge, which had them all running around like headless chickens arguing, the money is not necessarily all there once they start crunching the numbers.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, Chloe Dobbs and Chris Hope. We spoke to Neil Parish, Conservative MP, of course, earlier, and you and I were both astonished by the fact that now there is so little between the parties that even Mr Parish seemed to be quite wooed by Sir Keir.
That's right, Martin. I mean, Chloe, Chris Hope in the studio here. Yeah, we spoke to Neil Parish earlier. He's a former Tory MP, of course, quit Parliament over an issue in his private life. But the way he's talking, he is saying that Tories are now going to vote Labour Here's what he had to say. Tory MP, you sound like you're about to vote Labour next election. Will you vote Labour?
Probably not, but it's tempting.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Damn it with faint praise.
It's tempting because, I think I'm very much a supporter of Rishi Sunak, actually, but I really don't like the behaviour of many of my colleagues because it's sort of a self-destruct button. So we got a good local candidate standing where I live in Somerset, so I will probably be able to vote for him and then hold my nose with the rest of the party. But I can see many Tories who are sort of One Nation type Tories who will be looking at Labour, I suspect, and some of them will most definitely vote for them. That is what Keir Starmer is doing. But like I said, who can blame him?
Chloe, that's Neil Parish there saying some will vote Tory, some will vote Labour. What's your view on that?
I think it depends what wing of the party people are on. You're going to have, tons of people are upset with the Tories and their incompetence, of course, and people will move to Reform, plenty of them. But I'm sure you have some people who feel like Reform is too right-wing for them and might vote for Labour. I think the main shift voting for Labour is not, say, lifelong Tory voters. You're talking about people who lent their vote to the Conservatives for the first time in 2019 and gave them one chance and they blew it. So they're going to go back to Labour. That's where you're going to see the real big shift. You may get some cases where there's a really good local candidate for Labour where someone switches, but I think the real movement is to Reform. The polls, that gap in the polls is just closing and closing. I don't think that the polls will exactly mirror what happens on election day, because you're going to have some people who say, I'm going to vote Reform just looking at the national picture, but then they look at the candidate that is put forward and they don't think that they're competent enough and they err on the side of safety. But nevertheless, I think that Reform will get a big chunk of the vote share at this election.
Well, Chloe, I wonder if that's the case. Matthew, I want to put that to you. I wonder that everyone knows you win from the centre ground. Yeah. Tony Blair got that. Jeremy Corbyn fundamentally failed to grasp that. And look at the election results. It speaks for itself. This is a big swing towards the centre on defence. I was astonished yesterday about this partial privatisation model of the NHS. Something Nigel Farage has championed. Is this the Labour Party moving into that ground that Reform might occupy? All that's missing now is a big set piece on immigration.
Well, and I think you will see an immigration intervention. As somebody who remembers the Ed Miliband immigration pledge we did in Great Yarmouth, I've got the scars on my back from that. I wish I'd got the mugs saying, which sell for quite a lot on eBay about the immigration pledge. But I think what you're seeing is it's not saying it's a privatisation. It's saying that we are going to use the private sector to deliver for people, and it's that Blairite thing of talking about delivering for families.
Tories wouldn't get away with saying that.
No, they wouldn't.
Accused
so if you've got the political capital, Martin, use it. If you've got the political capital, you should definitely use it, and that's why. I mean, I think what's great about what Wes has said this week is he's looking to how a Labour government is actually going to deliver in office and not just make promises. So if he promised, it'd be easy to say no privatisation, keep the left happy, keep the unions happy, might get another check from Unison. But actually, he knows that he's going to clear those waiting lists and see a second Labour victory, then he's going to have to use the private sector.
There we go. Stonking stuff. Thank you very much, Matthew, Chris and Chloe down the line. Great debate. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that at home as much as I did.